we welcome you, and it's nice to have you come out on this wintry day. Spend some time getting to know our guest, Robert Gaylon Ross. Let's give you a little background on Robert. I want to show you how credentialed he is. Robert was born in Big Lake, Texas, and he holds a BS degree in industrial engineering from Texas A&M University. While active in engineering, he was licensed professional in the state of Texas and a national certified manufacturing engineer. After graduation, he accepted a commission as a second lieutenant, later promoted to first lieutenant in the Army, from the Army Security Agency, the ASA, a branch of the National Security Agency, the NSA, which is the big brother to the CIA. Military training was in the field of cryptoanalysis, or rather known as breaking codes, and served as a company commander with an intelligence unit on the demilitarized zone in the Chorwan Valley, South Korea, from 1956 to 1957, after the fighting had ceased. Upon leaving active duty, he began his professional career in the petroleum industry, served as an industrial engineer for 10 years until being promoted into management, and was a manufacturing plant manager for over 10 years. The past 17 years, he served as an international management consultant working in the U.S., Japan, Mexico, Canada, England, and Iran. Interesting. After completing the manuscript to his first book, The Who's Who of the Elite, which we have available here at the bookstore, we have all of his books available, he contacted a number of publishers to ascertain their interest in the material. They all declined, imagine that, because of the subject matter, so he formed his own publishing company, RIE, and published the first of 14 books in progress. The author has devoted the rest of his life to exposing the real truth about those evil ones in the world who would like to make us all their slaves. Robert Gaylon Ross is the author of several other books, including The Elite Serial Killers of Lincoln, JFK, RFK, and MLK, as well as The Elite Don't Dare Let Us Tell the People. And his newest book is entitled What the Elite Have Done to America and What to Do About It. So without, nobody came to hear me talk, so without further ado, I'll just hand it over to
We did a
Robert.
good job. You did a good job.
Yes, you did good.
And let's all welcome
All right.
Thank you very much, Harlan. This is probably my third or fourth visit here, and I always enjoy coming to your store because you have nothing but the truth in your store, and you're willing to put it out there, and you're not ashamed of it, you're proud of it, and so I like to participate in and associate with people of that mode.
Thank
But
you,
you're doing a great job, and so hang in there. It's only going to get better.
I'm going to take your word on that.
All right.
I'm going to quote you on that.
Trusting you.
Put this up a little. All right.
We don't have enough time for me to go over all my books, so but when I get through, we'll have a Q&A period, and I'll be glad to answer questions on any of the previous books. Tonight, we'll talk about a DVD that I just produced. This is a FileMaker Pro database advanced, which is compatible with both PCs and Macintosh. And once you load it into your DVD drive of your computer, the FileMaker Pro advanced software is then resident. You don't need it on your computer, it's all in the DVD. And this DVD gives a history of the secret organizations, and it's also sortable. If you go up the top of the toolbar on your computer, you can enlarge it by going to View and then come down to Zoom, and it'll come up to about twice the size. And then you go over to the right, second toolbar tool to the right is Records, and you hit Records and come down to Sort, and it'll give you a window. On the right side window, there'll be what you want to sort by. On the left are all the different variants that you can use for your keywords to sort by. And in the middle, there's two buttons. One that says clear all, and the other says move. And so the first thing you do is you hit the clear all button, and that'll empty the right-hand window. You go over on the left window and you click on country and hit move, and that'll move it to the right. And then if you want to sort by affiliation, you come down that list to affiliation, hit move, and it'll move it over there, and then you hit sort. And once you've done that, you can find out all the members of the CIA, all the members of the Defense Department, all the members of the State Department, all the members of the White House, all these different affiliations sorted by their term. And then even it sorts the companies and the TV and media, the newspapers, news magazines. It sorts all by name. Now, if you want to find out how many are in Congress, you go back to that same records, come down to sort. It'll open up again, and you hit the clear all, which empties the right-hand frame, and then you move over country, move, and then you come down to a job, move, and it'll sort them by country and by their job title. And then you scroll down the page, and there's almost 14,000 records. And by the way, I've been loading these records since early 1992. I've put thousands of hours of work into this, and I've had paid assistants that have put probably thousands of hours of work into it. And my beautiful daughter did the cover, so I'm proud of her efforts. But then once you sort by their job, you scroll down until you come to congressmen, and it'll show you all the congressmen that are active today in Congress, plus all the former congressmen. And then you go further down to Senate, and it'll show you all the senators that are active today, and then all the former senators. Now, if you want to find out how many people belong to more than one secret organization, then you go back to sort, you come down, or records, sort, you empty the right-hand page, you hit country, always start with country. Otherwise, it'll bring out 58 nations in with it, and you don't want to mix it up. You can, but it's up to you. But so then you move over country, and then you move over groups, and then hit sort, and then go down the groups column, and when you get to the very bottom, it'll show you every secret member. There's this member of each of the secret groups. There may be one or two, and I haven't looked, but there may be one or two that are members of all 4 secret groups, including Skull and Bones. But there's about 3 dozen that belong to Bilderberg's Council for Formulation and Trilateral Commission. Say there may be 2 or 3 that are also Skull and Bones. But this is a very powerful database, and you can't do anything with it. I mean, you can't mess it up, because once you turn it off, it's just like starting all over again. So you can sort it any way you want to, and then when you load it again, it's going to start off alphabetical by last name, by country, and then by last name. But it lists every member of the Skull and Bones since 1832 up until 1986. I haven't been able, and I wrote to Yale University Library and asked them for their help in finding members after 86, and they said they quit publishing that information. It's not even included in their yearbook. So, but I've written letters of request to President Clinton's library and also George Herbert Walker Bush's library, asking for any details they have in their archives that are relating to Skull and Bones. And there are a lot of people waiting in line to have the archives sorted, so I still expect to, one of these days they'll send me updated list of Skull and Bones that is beyond 86. Because I know they're in their records, and it's just waiting till my name comes up in the list so that they can go find it. But that pretty well covers the DVD, and let me get in my latest book, which is titled What the Elite Have Done to America and How to Fix It. And I'm sure that every one of you have your own solutions of how to fix and your own definition of what's wrong. So the book contains my definition of what I think is wrong in the order that I think we need to correct it. And then I offer my suggestions of how to correct these problems. And it's my opinion that it's sort of like a pendulum. The pendulum swung way over here, and it's about to fall off. In order to get it back to center, we're going to have to swing it way over here, and then gradually let it come back to the middle. But you can't get it to the middle until you have an overkill. And so most of my recommendations are pretty radical, but I think they'll work. The likelihood of it happening is something else, because we know that the elite control everything of significance anywhere in the world, including our Congress. Now, no laws will be changed or new laws initiated until we can absolutely gain public control of our Congress. And we can't do that until we start at the very beginning. We've got to overhaul our voting system. You all know many examples of voter irregularity or just outright cheating and ballot stuffing and all sorts of things. And so until we get that corrected, nothing else can happen, because that's how we elect people that will do what we want them to do, through a correct and honest voting system. Now, my solution to the voting system is that all voting should be done on paper ballot and submitted, and everybody that wants to run that passes the limit, maybe you need to, in every state, and every state varies, but let's say that you need to have 5,000 names on the ballot, or on a petition in order to get your name placed on the ballot. Once your name is on the ballot, it ought to be on this list. And then once everyone, and then you also need to register to vote, and you should have some photo ID in order to register to vote. And then when it comes time to vote, you should have some photo ID in order to vote, and you should have your voter registration card there with you, so that we don't have more than one person voting under the same name, or we don't have a bunch of illegals coming in and voting. And so now, and then once the voting is over, I don't care how long it takes to record the number of people that voted for who. If it takes a month, I don't care, as long as it's honest. Now, the news media, they want immediate resolution. While the voting is going on, they want to project who they think the winner is. Well, I think we need to have a ban of all media that they cannot report any polls, or they can't take any polls up to, let's say, for a week before the election, and cannot have exit polls, because people that are voting in Maine, the people in California will see how they voted and say, well, I'm going to go with the crowd, and so Maine voted this way, I'm going to go that way too. so that it should be a complete mystery of who won until all paper ballots are counted by a committee made up of all parties that are running for the office. And if it looks any question at all, there should be an immediate recount until everybody's satisfied they have a good count. And then they should publish the outcome of that vote in the local newspaper and local radio stations, or local TV, before the count is ever sent to Washington. Because once Washington gets the total, they can manipulate anything they want to. But if the answers are at the precinct, it's very difficult for them to manipulate it. So now, and also what we need to do is we need to have the Constitution amended so that it provides for referendum, let's see, referendum and recall, so that all city, state, county, and federal elected people can be recalled under certain conditions, like California has for all their elected people. And once we have that at the federal level, then the people in Congress are going to have to say, well, if I don't do right, they're going to jerk me out of office. So we need to clever their head. Okay, now we've corrected the voting process. Next, we need to attack the campaigning for office situation. Now that it's not unusual for a president to spend $1 billion running for office. That's absolutely ridiculous. So how do you get that cost down? First of all, we should restrict the period of campaigning for president to 6 months prior to the election. We should restrict the campaigning for Senate and House Representatives to 3 months prior to the election. And then Congress should pass a law that requires all the news media to provide free space or free airtime for all candidates, every candidate running, so certain amount each week. And then they should set up a channel that's purely for political campaigning, 24/7. And if you want to watch it, it'll get dull, but if your candidate is on there, watch it, or if your one you don't like is on there, watch it, and so that you can decide which one you really want to vote for. And the next problem we have is the two-party system has absolutely failed us. There's literally no difference between Democrats and Republicans. And certainly the staff people in Congress and they rarely change. They just change the person that's sitting in the head office. And when Democrats are proposing some bill like health care, Republicans almost 100% vote against it. It works the same the other way. If the Republicans want to do something, the Democrats vote against it. We don't put them in office to vote for anything that will help or hinder a particular or political party. They're there to correct our problems of this nation, not to enhance their party. And so ideal would be that when we have elections that we have enough independent party people running so that a great mix would be 25% one independent party, 25% another independent party, 25% Democrats, and 25% Republicans. And ideal would be have 100% of all elected people to be independent, not belong to any party. That's ideal. But now once we corrected the voting process, we nullify the two-party system, and we have enough independent people in office that they're working now for us instead of for their party. then we can start working on laws that are for the public citizen. Now, every law that is passed is for a special interest group. I bet you can't name one law in your lifetime that you can remember that's strictly for the public citizen. Every law is, in fact, probably most of them are written by special interest people. They'll write the entire law and take it to their guy and put a lot of money in his pocket under the guise of campaign financing. And they write the law so that what they do is legal. If we did the same thing, it would be called bribery. And so we need to change that. And also in the voting process, no one should be allowed to donate more than $1,000 per candidate per running cycle. And that no one outside of the district in which that person is running should be able to donate any money. So let's say it's the 14th District of Texas, only people in the 14th District can donate money to any candidate, I don't care who it is, to run for office to represent the 14th District. And that means that people in Washington, on K Street in Washington, can't load his pocket up with money. That all money must come from people that he supposedly is supposed to represent. Okay, now, once we cleaned up that, then we need to really get into some heavy stuff. The next real heavy area that we need to attack is our economic crisis. A very dear friend of mine, Ellen Hodgson Brown, is an attorney in California, and she came up with the idea that the Federal Reserve System is a major part of our problem, so Congress has the power to nationalize the Federal Reserve System. Just take it over. Just with signing of, if they pass a law and the president signs it, immediately the Federal Reserve then belongs to Congress, which the Constitution stipulates today. The Constitution says only Congress has the right to create and determine the value of money. And they sold that right to the international bankers in 1913, which created the Federal Reserve Act, which, and at the same time, they created the income tax. And all the income taxes don't go to the Treasury Department, they go directly into the Federal Reserve. So we need to crack that. Now, let me get into some details on that. The financial organizations, the Federal Reserve and all the banks have created some very dangerous products. Probably the most dangerous two are derivatives and credit default swaps. Now, a derivative is a contract that can be written so that you make a bet one way or another. You might bet that the weather's going to get hotter, or the weather's getting colder, or you might bet on a index of monetary funds, or you can bet on the outcome of election or whatever. And then the credit default swap is they can write an insurance policy that will guarantee that if you lose in your derivative venture, you've got a credit default swap that will offset that, so you can't lose. All right, now what the magnitude of the derivatives and credit default swaps? On September 29th, 2007, J.P. Morgan Chase Bank had total assets of $1.2 trillion. They had outstanding derivatives of $91.7 trillion, or 76.4 times their net worth. That is a Ponzi scheme. Bernard Madoff went to prison because he had a Ponzi scheme, but he only hit his friends for what, $50 billion, something like that. J.P. Morgan Chase is $76.4 trillion in gambling debt, or gambles, that they've created, and they create both negative and positive. And then Citibank, their net worth was, in 2007 was $1.23 trillion. They had $34 trillion of derivatives outstanding, or 27.6 times their net worth. If you take the top 6 banks, their net worth was $4.91 trillion, and they had derivatives outstanding of $168.4 trillion, or 35 times the net worth of those top 6 banks. Now, credit default swaps, in June of 2008, they were $54.6 trillion outstanding in credit default swaps. AIG went under because of their credit default swaps backfired on them. And we had to give AIG, $180 billion or something like that. Now, part of their contracts were written, and every now and then a word won't come to me, but it'll come back to me in a little bit. But that's part of being 78 years old. You have to forgive me for that. But they, back in 2007, the banks were fixing to fail, and so they contacted the head of the Treasury Department. And he went running to Congress and saying, the sky is falling, the world's going to collapse, we're all going to end up just in mud if you don't give the banks $700 billion.
A bailout.
Bailout. And so Congress, they're controlled by the banks anyway, so they, oh yeah, we're going to save the banks, so they quickly passed this. And then later on they passed it for another $700 billion. And the Federal Reserve is giving banks something like $4 trillion. We don't, the Federal Reserve is secret, so they don't have to tell us how much they've given to the banks. But it's probably something around $12 trillion that we have, between the Fed and Congress, have dumped into the banking system to keep them alive. And they're still failing. There's danger that one or two other banks may fail before the end of the year. Citibank is very subject to failing, and you go back 2 years, Citibank was one of the biggest banks in New York. But they all got involved in subprime lending and credit default swaps and derivatives, and it was of their own making. Now, when they lose money, they want us to help them out. When they make money, they don't share it with us. That's really fair-headed. Now, there's another practice that is involved in the financial market, and that is pro forma financial statements. Literally speaking, pro forma means an approximation of. And so when they issue an annual report and they say it's a pro forma statement, it just says this is an approximation of what our financial situation is. Now, they have plenty of time and they have people on the payroll. All they have to do is Congress pass a law saying that all financial statements must be absolutely accurate to the best of their knowledge, and the CEO of the company must sign a certified statement that it's as accurate as it can be. And if they find that it's manipulated, then that CEO can go to prison. So we need to pass that law to eliminate pro forma financial statements, and it should reflect should be provided under general accepted accounting principles that are required by all corporations. Now, our Congress and our federal government are not held to those standards. They have 4 or 5 different financial systems within our federal government, and that's by design. They don't want, if there's one system and they're all held to general accepted accounting principles, then we'd really know what's going on, and they don't want us to know what's really going on. So they have all these others. And even more of an insult, on financial statements, they have what they call off-balance sheet assets. Now, what the heck is that? It's either an asset or it's a liability. How can it be off-balance sheet, but they have off-balance sheet items on their financial statements? And that's just another way of fooling the public. Another major problem that I have with the financial people is, especially in currencies and stocks and bonds and commodities, is they have what they call short selling. And what's short selling? Short selling says that I will borrow so many dollars worth of currency from you, and you're supposed to agree to that, and then I sell it. And then with me and several other people, we'll drive the value of that currency down, and then I'll buy it back at a lower price, and then I'll pay you back. And that's short selling. And that's legal. And it's just like if I were to borrow your car and sell it, and then did it up so that the value went down, and then sell it at half the price, then I'd make a profit on it. But you have a junk car. But they can legally sell stocks, bonds, commodities, and currencies short. Even worse than that, they have what they call naked short selling. Naked short sale is, I'm going to sell your car and I'm not even going to borrow it from you. I'm just going to sell it. And then I'm going to make money when it's got dented fenders. But they allow that. But if I sold your car, that's fraud, and I'd go to prison. But they do it all the time on Wall Street and in the stock markets, and especially in currency transactions. And the insiders, people like George Soros, use short selling to manipulate the currency value in many nations around the world. They drive the value down. First, they set it short when it's high. 2 or 3 of them get together and drive it down, and then they buy it back when it gets down low. And they almost broke South Korea's economy. They almost broke Indonesia's economy. George Soros alone, those 2 nations, just by short selling on the currency. And they had no protection. They just had to lay back and take it. So the answer to that is you can't sell anything, or there should be a law that says you can't sell anything that you don't have legal right to. If there's a title, you ought to have a title in your name. And then you can sell it. You sell it what you want to then. You can sell it for a lot less, but it's yours. Who cares? but you can't naked short sell, or you can't short sell somebody else's. In terms of financial oversight, the Federal Reserve System was created supposedly to settle down the financial situation of the United States, to keep the banks and the financial organizations under control, and to get away from all these booms and busts. But in all reality, the 1929 bust was caused by the Federal Reserve. They were put into business in 1913 to stop that, but the first right out of the box, they crashed our economy. And how'd they do that? Well, they did that by, they made money very cheap. You could borrow money for just on margin, and you could buy stocks and bonds and commodities and currency, and then when price went up, then you could pay back that loan, and everybody would be in good shape. Well, from 26 to 29, they just passed money out like it was going out of style. In 29, all of a sudden, they drew it all back in, and they quit loaning money. They called all loans, and people had mortgaged everything, and so a lot of people committed suicide because they just couldn't get over it. Now, the Fed they had the power to then start issuing liquidity or issuing money, but they didn't. So it took about 10 years for the economy to recover. And now let's fast forward to about 1978. We had what was then called the savings and loan fiasco. The savings and loan was another deal similar to what happened recently, but they didn't use good lending practices, and most of the savings and loans went bankrupt. It took about a generation or 20-something years for this to happen again. When Bob Rubin was Treasury Secretary, he told Congress, y'all are too much of a burden on our banking system. You need to deregulate the banks. You're really causing them a lot of trouble. So they completely deregulated the banks. And then they came out with derivatives and credit default swaps and subprime lending and all sorts of gambles. And the world economy probably lost $50 trillion or something like that overnight due to these, because it was completely deregulated. So it took a generation to forget the savings and loan scandal. Now, the Lehman Brothers went under a little over a year ago. So it's been at least a year or longer since the crisis hit. And the Federal Reserve or Congress have not done one thing to re-regulate the banks. Now, they can get up and pass a law tomorrow to set up a new holiday or something like that, but they can't re-regulate the banks, because the banks they've got the hand in their pockets that you do it our way, we'll add more money in your pocket. If you don't, we'll take that money we put in there out. And so special interest, and particularly the financial Wall Street people, absolutely control Congress. And for the health bill they've been trying to pass, it seems like there's something like $2 billion in the last 3 months that they put in the pockets of Congress in the term of campaign financing. Now, why would they do that? Just because they they're nice guys. Well, heck no, they're trying to, first of all, they're going to write the bill, and then they're going to pay them to vote for their bill that they write. So we're fixing to go into hyperinflation. With the Federal Reserve creating money right and left, I've got a chart in the book that shows the money supply, M3 money supply. It was fairly level for 40 years, and all of a sudden it took off straight up. And we don't know whether it's going to come down or whether it's going to keep going straight up. But the net effect is, as they create money, whether it's paper money or computer money, it drives down the value of the U.S. dollar as opposed to all foreign currencies. Now, most commodities, and particularly oil and gold, are denominated on the dollar. So, as the value of the dollar goes down, the value of the dollar goes up, and the cost of oil goes up. And for the last dozen years, I've been advising as many people that will listen to me that if you have any loose change at all, put it in gold. And about 5 years ago, I said, well, now, if I think that's wise counsel, maybe I needed that myself. So I bought into gold, and I bought gold at $337 an ounce. And today it's almost $1,200 an ounce. And will end the year at least $1,200 an ounce or more. Next year it'll probably end the year at least $1,500 an ounce. And some even predicting within 5 years it'll be $5,000 an ounce.
Wow.
And but I was on the side, and I was watching it, and it started dropping. I said, well, maybe I need to buy it. And said, well, maybe it'd go a little lower. And it went a bit lower, and then it went up. I said, well, I better watch some more. And then it went down. I said, well, it's heading down lower. I said, no, that's not that. And then it went up again. So finally, I bit the bullet. I said, I'm going to quit gambling. I'm going to get in there and put it in my safe and not touch it. And so today it's worth at least 3 times what I paid for it. And my landlord, she's Lenore Reimer's ranch out on 71. At one time, she and her husband owned 8,000 acres of land right on Highway 71 at Pedernales River. And she's ready to sold some of it off. And one day I was over at the house, and she's my landlord. I rent from her. And she was also my 42 partner in playing dominoes. And we just stumped everybody that played with us. But I said, Lenore, I know this is minding your business, but how much money do you have in your checking account? She looked down, and I said, no, tell me, Lenore, I want to know. She said, it's over $1 million. I said, golly, you can't do that. And so I said, why don't you buy some more cows and then buy $500,000 worth of gold? Oh, I don't want to put that much in gold. I said, well, all right, the lowest I'm going to go is you got to buy $250,000 worth of gold. So she said, well, I don't know how to do it. I said, you just agreed to do it, and I'll take care of everything. All you got to do is just sign your name, and it'll all be automatic. And so she bought $250,000 worth of gold, and it's more than doubled since she bought it. And so she's my friend when I see her. Could go the other way, but I've been seeing this coming for a long time, and so there's almost no risk involved, or I wouldn't advise her to do it at all.
How's the rent?
I'm sorry?
She go up on her rent.
She treats you right.
But I've got a dear friend in California who's an attorney, Ellen Hodson Brown, that came up with a theory that if the Federal Reserve doesn't do right, Congress needs to just pass a law and the president sign it, just nationalizing the Federal Reserve. And they can legally do that because they created it with a law in 1913. And then they can take the national debt, and the interest on the national debt is something like $300 billion a year. And it's not exactly that, but it's close to it. And so, and this is owed to the Federal Reserve and to foreign countries like China and Japan and different nations around it. So we're real good at printing money. Once we own the Fed, we print enough money, then we buy back all of those bonds and treasury notes from those. We just give them cash and get those bonds back. So the term for that is we monetize our debt. Now that says we've created a lot of money. Well, we've also eliminated debt. We've eliminated interest on the debt, and it's a legal transaction. We actually have done that before. The Treasury Department called a particular treasury note because the interest was down at a point where it was advantageous to just buy those bonds back rather than pay the interest on them. So they did. So they set a precedent on it, but we can actually monetize our debt after we've taken control of the Federal Reserve. Now we also need to, because the national banks and all banks and all credit unions have the ability to create money and credit. So, and that's because of the fractional reserve system. And how that works is the Federal Reserve requires that if you're going to loan money, you must retain 10% in reserve to cover your exposure. So once we've nationalized the Federal Reserve, then we need to nationalize all national banks. So then all that's left are state banks and credit unions. And then to keep them from creating money and credit, we need to raise the reserve limit from 10% to 100%. So then Congress is the only body that can legally create money and credit. And now we have the financial system under control. Okay, now, later on in later chapters, I recommend one of the major example is, and I'll explain why later, that we need to bring every piece of military equipment and every person that is in our military service back to continental United States.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Immediately. And just think about the money that they spend overseas just buying cookies or cigarettes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If they were stationed here, they would buy it and support our local economy. But so if we bring all our military service and equipment back to continental United States, and if you need to do something, put them on the Mexican border. Let them patrol the Mexican border. That'll keep them busy. But in doing that, I think we can easily cut the Department of Defense budget in half. And that's $2.1 billion. Half of it. It's actually 402, so cut out half of it's 201 billion. Now, if we also, once you nationalize the Fed, nationalize all the national banks, if you take the money they earn in interest and loan it out to other banks, that is enough money that's equal to almost enough money to eliminate our income tax. And in 2005, we paid $927 billion in income tax. All right, so we take $201 billion from the Department of Defense. If we eliminate the income tax, that's $11.4 billion right off. The interest on the debt is $451 billion. And assume that 1/2 of the interest that the banks earn would come into the Treasury Department, and that's minus $185 billion. And I've got another problem with NASA. Why are we thinking about sending another trip to the moon, or we're sending rockets to Mars or Venus or wherever? What is that going to do for you? What benefit are you going to gain from that? I mean, we gain computers because of NASA. But the fact that now they think there might be ice on the moon, let's send a bunch of rockets up there and see if we can find that ice. That will not affect our life in one way except add to our cost, our income tax. So I'm saying to take half of the NASA budget and just put it into the Treasury, and then tell the people at NASA, now you concentrate on the ocean, you concentrate on energy, anything that can affect us directly, but quit worrying about going to the moon. Quit worrying about going to Mars. And then I think my last chapter, or second to last chapter, is I recommend that we completely eliminate the CIA. That we completely repeal the 1947 National Security Act, which created the CIA. And if we have time, I'll cover some of that. So I'm assuming that the CIA's budget is something like $24 billion a year. So we start with a income tax of $927, and all these deductions are at $880 billion. So we can almost completely eliminate the income tax for all individuals and corporations and everybody by doing that. Now, back before 1913, when the Federal Reserve Act was created, the federal government operated off of import duties and customs duties and franchise taxes. There wasn't no income tax. So why don't we take them back to the same road? And if we eliminate the income tax and say, then all goods coming to the United States should be hit with a tariff that would be exactly equal to what it would cost to manufacture in the United States, and exactly equal to what it was in China or wherever. But that duty would make it neutral, so that then you could say, well, you want to continue buying from China? You can, but there's a 50% duty on it. All right, that means that the CEOs of these companies are going to say, well, we don't have to pay all those duties. Let's bring our factories back to the United States. Now that's going to create jobs. And there'll be more jobs if we did that, if we immediately imposed, first of all, we need to get completely out of the United Nations, get completely out of the New World Order, World Trade Organization, need to nullify all free trade agreements, and tell everybody in the world that we, from here on, we will do business with you on a 50-50 basis. If you want to sell us $1 billion worth of goods, you got to buy $1 billion worth of goods that are made in the United States. That's all right. I mean, that'll work. And through all of these things that I call patriotism, we can, and it's just sort of dreaming, but it's all possible. We can get back to the point where it won't be a utopia, but it'll be as close to utopia as you will ever experience in your life. you don't have an income tax. You can even have government financed health care, all paid for by duties and franchise taxes. And if your children are not sent out to be killed and maimed and have lifelong mental problems because of the wars, you can't hardly get any better than that. So by nationalizing the Federal Reserve and federal banks and monetizing our debt and doing these other things, we completely eliminate the income tax. We need to then recreate a real Bill of Rights, and particularly in the financial area. When you borrow money from a mortgage company, let's say you borrow $100,000, typically you'll pay $221,000 back. One of the things that I propose that, and also in the repayment schedule, the amortization schedule, let's say $100,000 loan at 6.25% for 5 years, the payments would be $615 a month for 360 months. Through the 180 payments, that'd be $82,600 in interest. Now, the first payment is 85% interest. The 51st payment is 80% interest. And you don't reach 50% interest and 50% premium until you 228th payment of 360 payments. So what I'm proposing is every payment made on every loan, whether it's a car loan or a personal loan or a mortgage or whatever, must be 50% interest and 50% turn the principal. And of course they won't like that, and it'd be more difficult to get loans, but maybe we shouldn't have all these loans so easy to get. If it's real easy to plunk down a credit card and buy something you'd like, if you didn't have that credit card and you didn't have the money in your pocket, you'd say, well, I'll save up some money and I'll buy it later. But and I'm guilty of that. So, and the Glass-Steagall Act was also repealed on November 12, 1999. And that allowed, the Glass-Steagall Act prevented financial institutions from being involved in more than one activity. If you don't loan money, that's what you can do, but you can't also sell insurance, or you can't also sell stocks and bonds, commodities. But when they repealed the Glass-Steagall Act, that allowed them to do anything that they wanted to. And so there are many reasons why all the banks, if we hadn't stepped in, almost all of the big banks would have failed. Local banks would have been all right, because local banks generally have stockholders in the community and they have good lending practices. But they need to reinstate the Glass-Steagall Act and make it stronger, so that if you want to be in loaning money, that's all you can do. If you want to sell insurance, that's all you can do. But you can't mix them. All right, let's look at jobs. Last reported unemployment rate was 10.2%. It's actually, if you count everybody they've used up all of their unemployment insurance, and those that are underemployed or those that are in part-time the unemployment rate is probably somewhere between 18 and 20%. So we need to do something about that. And I've already talked about creating tariffs at the borders. And also we need to finish the fence on the border of Mexico. They're 20 feet high with razor concertina wire all across the top, and have all these troops that we brought back from overseas patrol regularly so that we stop illegal immigration, we stop the bringing in of drugs, and we stop guns going across into Mexico and a lot of things. But not only that, but we also have to inspect every container that comes in the United States. If they were to check 100% every container coming out of Mexico, just most conservative guess would be that 1 out of 10 is full of cocaine. Nobody checks them. Not one container is checked at the border or at any seaport. So they say, well, that will slow down commerce. Well, maybe that will create jobs here. If the goods can't come in, or it takes 4 to 6 weeks for a container to clear the customs, you might say, well, maybe I ought to make it in the United States. And that would create jobs. Just by legal immigration, the persons obtaining legal permanent resident status in the year 2008 was 1,107,000 people legally. And the average for the last 10 years is 1,019,000 people come into the United States legally every year. And there's probably something like 30 million illegal people in the United States. They say 12, but it's probably more like 30. So now they say, well, how do you going to get them back into Mexico? Well, there's an answer to that too. You take all of the states along the East Coast, from Maine to Florida, and then you enforce very strict hiring laws that every person on your payroll must be verified by E-Verify. And so then that'll make them come west a little bit. And then next year you take the states next to those states, all down from Canada to the Gulf, and you get tough on those states. And you gradually keep moving over. You get to Texas, and you start up at Canada, and you start coming down. And then there has to be a rush across the border. But we have to make sure that they're legal. And if you enforce all the laws, then you can do that. So that would create a lot of jobs. And then they say that these illegals do jobs that most people won't do. Well, it depends on how bad you like to eat. If you really have a problem finding enough food to eat, you'll find lots of jobs that you'll do. And then we can set up some legal way that we can allow migrant workers to come into the United States, but under very tight control, and set limits, and that they pay taxes and so forth. But at the end of their term, whether it's 6 months or a year, they'd better go back to Mexico, or they'll end up in Huscal. But we can do all this in a legal fashion if we really want to. Now, there's another problem that we have, and that's radical Islamists. They're most of the Islamists around the world are very decent, nice people. But there are very few that have reinterpreted their religion to say that we will go to heaven and have 7 virgins waiting on us if we kill a non-Islamic person. And we had a great example of that in Fort Hood. The guy killed 13 people, and he ended up with 4 bullet holes in him, and his spine. He got a bullet in his spine, so he'll be a cripple all his life. Now, he would love to go to Allah land and be a martyr. So it's my recommendation that they don't sentence him to death, that they sentence him to solitary confinement for the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Give him food, let him live with his problems. Let him pay that price and not become a martyr. But don't allow him any way to commit suicide, because that's what he wants to do. But the Prime Minister of Australia handled the radical Islamist question very readily. He did a public speech and he said, this is Australia, we have our customs and our preferences, and if you don't like them, go back to where you came from. And if you get out of line, we're going to send you back to where you came from. And they're not hampered by political correctness in Australia. And so they can, when somebody wants to wave their flag and riot and protest to change customs or whatever, grab them all up and put them on a plane and send them back where they came from. Now, a lot of people are not aware that part of our job problem is because union officials were drafted by the elite. And I have absolute concrete evidence of it. George Meany was president of AFL-CIO from 1955 to 1979. He was on the CIA payroll. I have absolute evidence of that. John Sweeney was president of the AFL-CIO from 1995 up until just recently. He was Council of Foreign Relations. Linda Chavez Thompson was Executive Vice President of AFL-CIO, Council of Foreign Relations. Joseph Lane Kirkland, former President of AFL-CIO from 79 to 95, Council of Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission. Lynn Russell Williams, International President of the United Steelworkers, member of the Bilderbergs. Jack Shankman, President of Amalgamated Clothing and Textile Workers Union, Bilderbergs, and Council of Foreign Relations. Now, almost all textile jobs have left the continent of the United States because Jack Shankman, President of Amalgamated Clothing Workers, and Albert Shanker, President of the American Federation of, Jay Mazur, President of the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. So they allowed all these clothing and textile jobs to be exported. Now, David Rockefeller took over the Council of Foreign Relations as a chairman in 1975. And I have a graph in my book that shows that lockouts and strikes peaked in 1975 and are headed towards zero because the elite have taken over the unions. And the answer to that is all union members must be notified that this is going on, and that anybody running for any union job should swear that they are or not part of any secret group. And we don't have any business meddling with union affairs, but the union members should care. They shouldn't give their dues to somebody that's sold them out. All right, now, one subject that really bothers me, and that's war. The wife of the first person to be called Rothschild, her name was Goodly Snapper, wife of Meyer Amschel Bayer Rothschild, once said, "If my sons do not want wars, there will be none." At that time, her 5 sons and her husband were in charge of the 6 major financial regions of all Western Europe. And then there's an article appeared in the Palgrave's Directory of Money and Finance that said, a long-running joke, not without some foundation, was that no prince could make war in Europe without the permission of the Rothschilds. They finance all wars. They finance both sides. They finance the reconstruction of the nations destroyed in the wars. So they make money off of wars. And in the book I list all of the wars from about 1793 up until today. And then if you only look at the wars that the United States was involved in, say from 1900 until today, there have been 695,000 of our military people killed since 1900. 695,000. 1.2 million wounded at a cost of $10 trillion since 1900. And that's the reason I say bring them all home. And probably the person that is the most accurate on solving this was the most decorated military man in, I believe it was 1935. And his name was, I believe it was Brigadier General Butler. And he proposed that no military person be allowed more than 500 miles from our continental borders. No, it's 200 miles for the people and 500 miles for airplanes. And what I would add to that is that we would maybe double our nuclear submarine fleet and put them on patrol all over the world and notify everybody that they're out there on patrol and that they contain ballistic nuclear weapons, and they're there just in case you decide you want to do something to the United States. Because we're not going to send our airplanes or our soldiers over there to get you. We'll just lob a little grenade in your back pocket. And they're going to cross either the Atlantic or the Pacific to get to us. And if we bring all of our Navy back and put them in dock on our shores, and we've got all these submarines out there. And another thing I would allow then would be drones and tankers to refuel drones. And then we could have these unmanned drones traveling all over the world, checking on people. And so if they shoot it down, maybe it's just $1 million, but we hadn't lost somebody's life. But we can just tell everybody that we trust you, but we're going to verify. And we're going to be watching you. And if you decide to do us harm, we're really going to hurt you. And then the whole world would settle down. The next area that I covered in the book is the energy crisis. If you look at the TV and magazines and so forth, particularly on television, they show a car digging out and really zooming around and throwing up rocks here and there. And they're trying to tell you that you want a car with a lot of acceleration and a lot of speed. Now, why do you need that? In fact, let's look at some examples. Bugatti Veyron V16 has a 1,001 horsepower engine, top speed of 250 miles an hour plus. It weighs just a little over 4,000 pounds. The gas mileage is 2.4 miles per gallon, but it'll go 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds.
Wow.
Now, and there's lesser examples of that, but that's the top example. But I was telling one of our friends that, what we need to do is, we don't really need to go that fast, and we don't need to accelerate that fast. And I said, what if we pass a law saying that all cars manufactured and imported in the United States had an absolute top speed of 70 miles an hour, and then set the speed limit at 60 miles an hour, and then have graduated fines if you exceed 60. And this person said, I don't want the government telling me how fast I'm going, or I can go. So they tell you every day. Drive down the interstate highway, it says 60 speed limit, 70 speed limit. That's the federal government telling you how fast you can go.
It's already happening.
In my age, they changed the speed limit in my area to 60 miles an hour, and so I drive with cruise control. When I see a speed limit, I set it on that, and I will not exceed that. And I get to town just about as fast as I would before. And if you need to get there a little quicker, leave a little earlier. But why do you need to go over 60? And why do you need to go from 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds? What if you could get 0 to 60 in 12 seconds? Well, I mean, you won't burn rubber, but you're not going to use up a lot of gasoline. Now, another effect that it has is you cut the size of the engine in half, because you don't need all that horsepower, because you don't go to 120 miles an hour. The law sets it so you physically can't go over 70 miles an hour, so you cut your horsepower in half. You don't need to burn rubber, so that with cutting down the acceleration and the top speed will cut your fuel consumption in half, so you can easily get 50 miles a gallon in a standard internal combustion engine. And what about the hybrids and the all-electric cars? They have to have a pretty large battery, maybe the size of this table. So if you cut down the top speed and you cut down the acceleration rate, you cut the size of that battery in half. And so that you can charge it quicker, it costs less. And think about all the faster you go, the more damage you're likely to incur in an accident, the more likelihood of physical harm or death, the faster you go. So deaths and injuries and personal property damage we cut way down, maybe in half. And and all it costs is some new signs with different speed limits on them, and Congress passed a law, and it's all over. Now they say that a lot of people are saying that we're running out of natural gas and oil in the United States and in the entire world. And they've created charts saying that we've been going up like this, and then we're going to reach a peak. Some predict the peak is 2008, and then we're going to steady decline until we completely run out of oil and gas. That's all a big lie. They have discovered new oil fields south of Canada within the United States borders that contain enough natural gas to allow it to, if everybody converted from electric heating to gas heating, to do it for another 300 years. And enough oil can be produced in fields that within the continental United States that would completely eliminate the importation of oil, and would have enough oil to last for another 500 years. But the oil companies have not built a new refinery, I believe, since 1976 or something like that. And the number of refineries in the United States has been cut almost in half since '76. And so they're not going to build another refinery because they're very expensive, and also they would rather import refined products. So we, with taxpayer money, we built the Hoover Dam. We built a number of dams around the country. We created the Tennessee Valley Authority. So why don't we take taxpayers' money? Of course, if we do everything I've said before, they won't be in taxpayer money, but it'd be run out of government funds. But they've already approved a natural gas pipeline from Prudhoe Bay through a Canadian route, and to come out somewhere around North Dakota or somewhere up in that range. A 48-inch pipeline, gas pipeline. Well, why don't, in that same right-of-way, add 2 more insulated 48-inch pipelines? It'd just be primarily material cost, just cost of pipe and the labor to weld it. But Lindsey Williams has certified that they discovered a major oil field off of Gull Island, off the north slope of Alaska, that the oil pool is something like 1,500 feet thick, and that it could run for hundreds of miles in all directions. And once they tapped that oil and found out what was there, they closed the well and shut it in and hoped nobody saw them. But Lindsey Williams witnessed it. So if you develop the Gull Island oil field and then flow it through one of these other 48-inch lines, and also what if the Alaska pipeline all of a sudden goes down? Then you've got these other 2 oil pipelines to feed the oil through. And also there's a lot of Canadian oil that could be put into that pipeline. And then build several very large refineries, oil refineries, at the termination point of these pipelines, so that the oil company is not going to build a refinery, so the federal government build a refinery and have someone like Valero or someone like that operate it, and so refine the oil as it comes in from Alaska, and also build maybe half a dozen or a dozen very large gas-fired electric generating plants at the termination of these pipelines, and then set a grid across the United States so that we feed electricity from these power plants all across the United States. And so that would see oil companies. They operate any way they want to, so they need competition. So if the federal government built a refinery and built these power plants, there'd be competition with the oil companies, so they'd have to clean up their act. They would have to start drilling wells and competing with this other structure. So we would completely eliminate energy problems altogether. Now, we still ought to encourage wind and solar and all these other means of producing electricity. But let's say there's an oil field that up in along the Rockies, North Dakota, South Dakota, and that range they call the Bacon Shale oil field. That they predicted contains 3.65 billion barrels of oil. And that's a fairly recent discovery. And also, there have been, let's see, I've talked about Gaylon. But there have also been large gas discoveries over in Louisiana, and also in the Rockies, and also in Pennsylvania. And so there's ample supplies left. Now let's get into the subject of, is petroleum a fossil fuel or is it abiotic? Fossil means it's created from the decay of dinosaurs and plants and so forth. And as long as I can remember, that is the dominant theory of how oil is produced. But I'm extremely fortunate to have had one of my two brothers to be a brilliant person that had an IQ of 160. He's no longer alive, but he wrote a physics book and I published it for him. And in that book, he documents the fact that within the core, within the inner part of the Earth, there's a ball of matter that's rotating in the same direction that the Earth rotates in, but it rotates 1 degree per day faster than the outer surface. So when the Earth rotates 365 degrees, that inner ball is rotated twice. So you got this ball that's creating friction between the outer zones that surround it, and all the heat of this friction, and it's created large caverns, could be 100 miles high. But he says there's lightning in there, and that the heat of the friction and this lightning have decomposed the substrates of the structures of the soil and created oil and natural gas. And it's creeped up through cracks in the surface and settled out in areas they call oil fields. And actually they have proved that some of the oil fields that they thought had gone dry, that actually shut the wells in because they were no longer producing. And they came back maybe 10, 15 years later and found out they were full again. And there's one example, the Eugene Island Block 333 field. In 1980, the world proven reserve was $645 billion billion barrels. In 2005, 1.3 trillion barrels. So the world supply is increasing. And also, probably most of the oil that is created in North Slope of Alaska is exported to Japan and China and Middle East or Far East and never comes into the United States. So we need to outlaw that. And any oil produced on U.S. soil must be consumed in U.S. sources. Now, I've got a chapter called Elite Spies Within Our Federal Government. And those elite spies I define as anyone who's a member of the Bilderberg's Council of Foreign Relations or Trilateral Commission. And I've got quite a number of pages where I show the evidence of the number of elite spies within the cabinet of each president. And every president since Woodrow Wilson. And Barack Obama is not immune. In Barack Obama's cabinet and staff, we have Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton attended the 1997 Bilderberg meeting and probably the 2008 Bilderberg meeting. And Obama very likely attended the 2008 Bilderberg meeting. Secretary of Defense Robert Gates was CIA director and member of the CIA for 26 years and member of the Council of Foreign Relations from 1983 to today. Secretary of Treasury Timothy Geithner, former CEO of the New York Fed, been a member of the CFR since '96, attended every Bilderberg conference since 2004. Secretary of Commerce appointee Bill Richardson was appointed, but he later had to withdraw, but he was a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. Secretary of Homeland Security Janet Napolitano has been a member of the Council of Foreign Relations since 2006. UN Ambassador Susan Rice is CFR member since '92. U.S. Ambassador to China John Meade Huntsman, CFR member since '93. National Security Advisor James L. Jones, CFR since 2000. Director of the National Economic Council, Director of OMB, Economic Advisor Paul Volcker is a member of all three secret organizations. So his cabinet and his advisors are all elite also, so he's not immune. So a lot of people say, is there going to be change? I say not likely. You might paint it a different color, but there won't be any significant changes. And then I list all of the elite members of the National Security Council, the Economic Advisory Board, the State Department, Ambassador to the United Nations, the Defense Department, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Every Joint Chiefs of Staff except about 3 have been members of the CFR. Most Treasury Secretaries, Goldman Sachs has supplied our Secretary of Treasury since Bob Rubin. Every one of them since then have been ex-Goldman Sachs. Now, how do we fix that? First of all, we need to make voting honest. Then we need to vote enough independent people in the office that we lose the two-party system problem. And then we start passing laws, and one of the laws should be that no one should hold an appointed or elected or an employed position in the federal, state, or local governments that have been a member of any secret organization, including the Bilderbergs, Bohemian Club, Club of Rome, Council of Foreign Relations, Illuminati, Ku Klux Klan, Mafia, Masonic Lodge, Pilgrim Society, Rosicrucians, Skull and Bone Society, Trilateral Commission, or any other secret organization that meets that's not available for public press to attend and report on what they're doing.
Wouldn't leave much.
And then once you pass that law, then everybody that's a member should immediately have to resign. And that's how we get the elite out of control of our government. And then I have a chapter on health care, and there's a lot of ways we can solve that. I really think we should open up the Medicare and Medicaid to everyone so that you pay to be insured. I think I pay something like $150 a month out of my Social Security, and I pay another $150 out of my Medicare supplement insurance. So that's about $300 a month that I pay for health care. So we ought to make that available to everybody in competition with insurance companies. And so if they don't drive down their rates or improve their practices, then people could switch over to the new Medicare. And competition does wonders. And a lot of people are speculating that if the government provided a public financed health care system, that it would drive all insurance companies out of business. Well, if they don't improve their rates and their benefits, they ought to go out of business. So competition is the way you solve these problems. I don't say that we should have health care for everybody, but we should provide Medicare available to anybody that wants to buy into it. And then those that can't afford to buy it, we'll have to treat them like we have in the past. Everybody have to pay a little bit extra for those people. And in terms of lobbyists, in 2008, the lobbyists contributed $512 million to Congress to help influence the healthcare system. Now, they don't do that for nothing. And the Food and Drug Agency, they're just a lapdog for the pharmaceutical companies. Mm-hmm. We need to change that so that exactly 1/2 of the Food and Drug Agency's budget must go to health prevention and research on things that would make our lives more healthy. And then they should identify every element that is carcinogenic, and then send a copy of that list to everybody that produces anything consumed by human beings. And say, if you have any of these ingredients in any of your products, the head of your company is going to go to prison. And then a lot of our illnesses and diseases will gradually start going away. Things like, I have a real problem with aluminum. Aluminum is involved in most deodorants. We don't know whether that's causing Alzheimer's. It could be causing ADD. It could be causing autism. We don't know. And then there are a lot of other things that are very harmful. That they've discovered that certain liquid soaps have certain ingredients in them that if you use only the soap with water that does not contain chlorine, it's okay. But if the water contains chlorine, the chlorine mixes one of the elements in the soap and it becomes carcinogenic. So, once we know that, we need to stop that. But they don't do that. So, we need to gain control of the Food and Drug Administration.
Big time.
Get rid of them.
Big time. Fluoride, too.
Yes, sir.
Fluoride is another
They're not
major problem. That could contribute to autism and a lot of our problems. That's just hitting the high spots. And most of my recommended solutions are quite radical. And a lot of people say I'm crazy, that it's protectionism or socialism. I call it patriotism. If we don't look out after the United States and our citizens, then we're not doing what we're supposed to do. And I call that patriotism. So let me just open it up for questions on this book or any of my past books. Yes, sir.
Sir, it's an honor and privilege.
Speak up, please. I can't hear you.
It's an honor and privilege hearing you talk and give this speech. But whenever you say about checking the containers that's coming across the border,
Right.
I mean, that's all very well and good, but isn't it kind of futile whenever the CIA is like bringing it over in plane loads or?
Well, one of my chapters it says we eliminate the CIA.
Okay, yeah, all right. I'm just like, and then the Afghanistan, ever since we've invaded up, the opium has gone up. It just seems like it's stopping the commerce there at the border is just like so futile whenever it comes.
Well, I'm saying slow down the commerce so we can check the containers. And if we have an agreement with Mexico that we'll do fair trade with them for every $1 billion that they ship into us, that they buy $1 billion of American-made goods, and it goes across the border. So we need this commerce.
Okay, yeah.
But we need to know what's in those containers.
Yeah. And one more thing.
Okay.
You mentioned all these organizations that we should be wary of.
Right.
What do you think of the... I just heard on the radio today that the American Defamation League has said that people like Alex Jones and people that follow him are lumped in with racist and you know, it's like in the Southern Poverty Law Center, those people, and the ADL, I mean, they're lumping us, or me, as some kind of a racist, bigot, whatever, you know. It's
No, I haven't done that. And let me state very clearly, I am absolutely not anti-Semitic.
Yes.
However, I am anti-Zionist, and there's a difference.
Yes.
If you don't know the difference, I'll be glad to discuss it with you. Yes, sir.
I think what the gentleman in the back was referring to was the Alex Jones.
Alex is a very dear friend of mine.
Tea Party people are being villainized now. That's the new tactic by the globalists, not to. Before they just kind of ignored them as some kind of wacko right-wing group, and now they've changed tactics and now starting to vilify them and make them an enemy of the state.
But that's a classic technique of the ADL and all the Jewish organizations. If you, in many audiences, if you just use the term Jew, you're automatically anti-Semitic, regardless of what you say. If you just say Jew, you're anti-Semitic. One of my dearest friends is a Khazarian Jew. He's been my friend for years. And I was once engaged to another Khazarian Jew. So there's no way you can prove I'm anti-Semitic, but I will guarantee you I'm anti-Zionist. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, may I ask you, sir, after 9/11, so many things happened with the stock market and all the banks. What would be your perception of that?
Just the 911 scenario in general, I will say all the evidence I've seen, and I've seen a lot of evidence, indicates to me that the federal government was either behind it or was complicit in the 911 attacks.
Thank you.
And, okay. But it's, and they did that, they need to always create a devil for us to be against, or an enemy to fight. What if we didn't have enemies and devils to worry about? We'd have a peaceful world. Yes, sir.
Real quick, do you know who controls or who's involved with the plunge protection team? The plunge protection team to the White House?
I discussed that in the book. In the book, it tells the members of the plunge protection team, and it's there are about 6 organizations that they've set up, and they're all financed by the Federal Reserve. And if the stock market goes into a quick dive, they go in and buy a bunch of stock. We never know what stock they buy. And so if they buy stock, ABC is the guy that buying that stock for the plunge protection team. Is he telling the guy next to him, buy ABC in just a minute? After I get through what I'm doing, you go ahead and buy it, and I'll tell you when. And so we don't know what sort of insider trading is going on there.
And I feel they're doing that with the precious metals for years.
The central banks control the price of gold. For up until about 6 or 8 years ago, N.M. Rothschild in London set the price of gold worldwide. And for some reason, and I hadn't figured it out, but they got out of that business. But the central banks buy and sell gold in order to keep the price of gold within a certain range. If the central banks got out of the business, gold could easily be $5,000 an ounce today.
Do you think that the India purchase was on purpose, or the India purchase when they bought the 200 metric tons, was that expected by the IMF? Or do you think
India routinely buys gold. Indians, their women all have a lot of gold, bracelets, necklaces, hair pieces. That's where their fortune is, so they wear it. And all over the Middle East, the women wear a lot of gold, because that's sort of their safety deposit box. I lived in Iran for a couple of years, and I saw a lot of gold. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Do you think that we're going to have some kind of confrontation with Iran, God forbid?
You're getting into a very deep subject there. We have not done anything in the Middle East that is not for or to protect Israel. We attacked Iraq to protect Israel. We attacked Afghanistan to protect Israel. In my book, I give you the details, or not in this book, but in my last book, since 1947, have given Israel something like $1 trillion. Now, let me ask you a question. If John Hagee were to go to Panama and set up Haiti land, and all of his disciples went down there, and they ran the Panamanians out and took over and started killing them and mistreating them, and then they turned around and said, America, send me about $3 or $4 billion a year. Would you think that would be a nice thing to do? We do that to Israel. And we send Egypt half that amount because to keep them from attacking Israel. But again, I'm anti-Zionist. I'm not anti-Semitic. I've got some Jews I love.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I think one of the, I don't know if you addressed this directly, but having like APAC and those sort of funds register as a foreign agent, I think Israel is the only country that's doesn't have to register as a foreign agent when they pump in a bunch of money for buying off Congress or whatnot. Do you know any way to directly address that? I heard Scott Ritter talk a lot about it, but not really the solution end of it. And I was just wondering if you had any good suggestions, like what...
I don't know any real details of that, but I do know that the CIA and the Mossad routinely work together, and the Jewish organization control Congress. They control the monies, which means they control Congress. And if we were equal and fair with all other religions or groups, that means that either we give everybody the same as we give Israel, or we don't give Israel anything. Ron Paul had an excellent solution. He says, we didn't create Israel, so why don't they earn their own way, do it themselves? And if the Jews want to send them money, have at it. But the average taxpayer shouldn't have to do it. But we do. Any other question? Yes?
Do you have any knowledge about who perhaps could be controlling the Zionists and the Rothschilds? Who's above them?
I've studied that a lot. In fact, I guess my curiosity really got up in 1972 when I read Non-Derecholic Conspiracy by Gary Allen. And I've never been able to put the subject out of my mind completely. And I needed to know who was behind the curtain. And that's when I first published Who's Who of the Elite in 1995. I had all the members, but I didn't know who was at the top at that time. By the time I published what the elite, the elite don't dare let us tell people, in that book I tell you exactly who's at the top. And I've got rock solid evidence in my book. So I know who's at the top. There's a Greek friend of mine from Las Vegas said that he thought that there was possibly one at the very top who lived in Mongolia. And that's troubled me. And in fact, if I can ever get enough money, I'm going to go to Mongolia and see if I can find any evidence of that. It doesn't sound logical. The only people in Mongolia are Mongolians that like that way of life. I'd like to visit it, but I sure wouldn't want to live there.
It's not so bad. Actually,
You've been to Mongolia?
on tours. Yeah, we went on tours.
I would love to go to Mongolia.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of places I'd like to go. I do like to go to Machu Picchu and see it physically myself. I'd like to go to a lot of places. Yes, sir.
Just an observation, but all this compiled together, the state of the world and the politics and where we are and how we get out of it. But since money seems to run politics, the elitists control the money, and money controls politics, and the root of all evil, the love of money is the root of all evil, and we all love money. Man, we're just, it's like an addictive machine for all of us. I mean, we all love money,
The cycle.
and money runs the world and runs politics.
I don't love money. I'd like to have enough money that I don't have to worry about
Yeah.
meeting the bills next month.
As we all would. It's just a mess. Just like a money machine out there that's running the world
Well,
and
there
controlling
has
us
to
like
be-
puppets.
There has to be something that you can exchange for food. A coin or a rock, a piece of wood or a stick,
Barter.
paper money or whatever. So money is necessary, and if you want more than the guy next door, you ought to work harder. Working harder ought to give you more money, and if that's what you want. So why not have the right to do that? And I'm not sure if I had $1 trillion that it wouldn't take very long to reach a point where life was very dull, because you couldn't spend $1 trillion.
You'd have to go for power next,
Yeah,
like
well,
the latest.
it's all power.
Yeah.
The international bankers create money out of thin air.
That's the elitist.
So they create money and then they want it back in the form of interest.
Right. Or
So
control.
if they want money, just create some and put it in your pocket and go somewhere else. Leave us alone. In fact, my ideal solution is to take every member of the elite that's in control all throughout the world and put them on some remote island
Amen.
and ship food to them,
Jim,
but not allow them to have any radio or telephone or anything. Just they can just subsist. There's nothing but elite on this island, and let them battle themselves. But they're not allowed off at all.
pharmaceuticals too.
That's kind of ideal.
What do you call 5 elitists on the bottom of the ocean?
Do what?
What do you call 5 elitists on the bottom of the ocean?
Bottom dwellers.
A good start.
Any other questions? Well, I thank you for your attendance, and if I've said anything that's of interest to you, it's in my books. And the store is a great store, and so they're in business to sell books, so I encourage you to help them stay in business.
And you'll sign them.
And I'll sign them.
All right.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
That was
And this DVD gives a history of the secret organizations, and it's also sortable. If you go up the top of the toolbar on your computer, you can enlarge it by going to View and then come down to Zoom, and it'll come up to about twice the size. And then you go over to the right, second toolbar tool to the right is records, and you hit records and come down to sort, and it'll give you a window. On the right side window there'll be what you want to sort by. On the left are all the different variants that you can use for your keywords to sort by. And in the middle there's two buttons, one that says clear all, and the other says move. And so the first thing you do is you hit the clear all button, and that'll empty the right hand window. And you go over on the left window and you click on country and hit move, and that'll move it to the right. And then if you want to sort by affiliation, you come down that list to affiliation, hit move, and it'll move it over there, and then you hit sort. And once you've done that, you can find out all the members of the CIA, all the members of the Defense Department, all the members of the State Department, all the members of the White House, all these different affiliations sorted by their term. And then even it sorts the companies and the TV and media, the newspapers, news magazines. It sorts all by name. Now, if you want to find out how many are in Congress, you go back to that same records, come down to sort, it'll open up again, and you hit the clear all, which empties the right-hand frame, and then you move over country, move, and then you come down to a job, move, and it'll sort then by country and by their job title. And then you scroll down the page, and there's almost 15,000, almost 14,000 records. And by the way, I've been loading these records since early 1992. I've put thousands of hours of work into this, and I've had paid assistants that have put probably thousands of hours of work into it. And my beautiful daughter did the cover, so I'm proud of her efforts. But then once you sort by their job, you scroll down until you come to congressman, and it'll show you all the congressmen that are active today in Congress, plus all the former congressmen. And then you go further down to Senate, and it'll show you all the senators that are active today, and then all the former senators. Now, if you want to find out how many people belong to more than one secret organization, then you go back to sort, you come down, or records, sort, you empty the right-hand page, you hit country, always start with country. Otherwise, it'll bring out the 58 nations in with it, and you don't want to mix it up. You can, but it's up to you. But so then you move over country, and then you move over groups, and then hit sort, and then go down the groups column and do what we want them to do through a correct and honest voting system. Now, my solution to the voting system is that all voting should be done on paper ballot and submitted, and everybody that wants to run that passes the limit, maybe you need to, in every state, and every state varies, but let's say that you need to have 5,000 names on the ballot, or on a petition in order to get your name placed on the ballot. Once your name is on the ballot, it ought to be on this list. And then once everyone, and then you also need to register to vote, and you should have some photo ID in order to register to vote. And then when it comes time to vote, you should have some photo ID in order to vote, and you should have your voter registration card there with you, so that we don't have more than one person voting under the same name, or we don't have a bunch of illegals coming in and voting. And so now, and then once the voting is over, I don't care how long it takes to record the number of people that voted for who. If it takes a month, I don't care, as long as it's honest. Now, the news media, they want immediate resolution. While the voting is going on, they want to project who they think the winner is. Well, I think we need to have a ban of all media that they cannot report any polls, or they can't take any polls up to, let's say, for a week before the election, and cannot have exit polls, because people that are voting in Maine, the people in California will see how they voted and say, well, I'm going to go with the crowd, and so Maine voted this way, I'm going to go that way too. So that it should be a complete mystery of who won until all paper ballots are counted by a committee made up of all parties that are running for the office. And if it looks any question at all, there should be an immediate recount until everybody's satisfied they have a good count. And then they should publish the outcome of that vote in the local newspaper. and local radio stations, local TV, before the count is ever sent to Washington. Because once Washington gets the total, they can manipulate anything they want to. But if the answers are at the precinct, it's very difficult for them to manipulate it. So now, and also what we need to do is we need to have the Constitution amended so that it provides for referendum, let's see, referendum and recall, so that all city, state, county, and federal elected people can be recalled under certain conditions, like California has for all their elected people. And once we have that at the federal level, then the people in Congress are going to have to say, well, if I don't do right, they're going to jerk me out of office. So we need to clever their head. Okay, now we've corrected the voting process. Next, we need to attack the campaigning for office situation. Now that it's not unusual for a president to spend $1 billion running for office. That's absolutely ridiculous. So how do you get that cost down? First of all, we should restrict the period of campaigning for president to 6 months prior to the election. We should restrict the campaigning for Senate and House Representatives to 3 months prior to the election. And then Congress should pass a law that requires all the news media to provide free space or free airtime for all candidates, every candidate running, so certain amount each week. And then they should set up a channel that's purely for political campaigning, 24/7. And if you want to watch it, it'll get dull, but if your candidate is on there, watch it, or if the one you don't like is on there, watch it, and so that you can decide which one you really want to vote for. And the next problem we have is the two-party system has absolutely failed us. There's literally no difference between Democrats and Republicans. And certainly the staff people in Congress, and they rarely change. They just change the person that's sitting in the head office. And when Democrats are proposing some bill like health care, Republicans almost 100% vote against it. It works the same the other way. If the Republicans want to do something, the Democrats vote against it. We don't put them in office to vote for anything that will help or hinder a particular or political party. They're there to correct our problems of this nation, not to enhance their party. And so ideal would be that when we have elections that we have enough independent party people running so that a great mix would be 25% one independent party, 25% another independent party, 25% Democrats, and 25% Republicans. And ideal would be have 100% of all elected people to be independent, not belong to any party. That's ideal. But now once we corrected the voting process, we nullify the two-party system, and we have enough independent people in office that they're working now for us instead of for their party. Then we can start working on laws that are for the public citizen. Now, every law that is passed is for a special interest group. I bet you can't name one law in your lifetime that you can remember that's strictly for the public citizen. Every law is, in fact, probably most of them are written by special interest people. They'll write the entire law and take it to their guy and put a lot of money in his pocket under the guise of campaign financing. And they write the law so that what they do is legal. If we did the same thing, it would be called bribery. And so we need to change that. And also in the voting process, no one should be allowed to donate more than $1,000 per candidate per running cycle. And that no one, when you get to the very bottom, it'll show you every secret member. There's member of each of the secret groups. There may be one or two, and I haven't looked, but there may be one or two that are members of all 4 secret groups, including Skull and Bones. But there's about 3 dozen that belong to Bilderberg's Council for Relation and Trilateral Commission. Say there may be 2 or 3 that are also Skull and Bones. But this is a very powerful database, and you can't do anything with it. I mean, you can't mess it up, because once you turn it off, it's just like starting all over again. So you can start it any way you want to, and then when you load it again, it's going to start off alphabetical by last name, by country, and then by last name. But it lists every member of the Skull and Bones since 1832 up until 1986. I haven't been able, and I wrote to Yale University Library and asked them for their help in finding members after 86, and they said they quit publishing that information. It's not even included in their yearbook. So, but I've written letters of request to President Clinton's library and also George Herbert Walker Bush's library, asking for any details they have in their archives that are relating to Skull and Bones. And there are a lot of people waiting in line to have the archives sorted, so I still expect to, one of these days they'll send me updated list of Skull and Bones that is beyond 86. Because I know they're in their records, and it's just waiting till my name comes up in the list so that they can go find it. But that program covers the DVD, and let me get in my latest book, which is titled What the Elite Have Done to America and How to Fix It. And I'm sure that every one of you have your own solutions of how to fix and your own definition of what's wrong. So the book contains my definition of what I think is wrong in the order that I think we need to correct it. And then I offer my suggestions of how to correct these problems. And it's my opinion that it's sort of like a pendulum. The pendulum is swung way over here, and it's about to fall off. In order to get it back to center, we're going to have to swing it way over here, and then gradually let it come back to the middle. But you can't get it to the middle until you have an overkill. And so most of my recommendations are pretty radical. But I think they'll work. The likelihood of it happening is something else, because we know that the elite control everything of significance anywhere in the world, including our Congress. Now, no laws will be changed or new laws initiated until we can absolutely gain public control of our Congress. And we can't do that until we start at the very beginning. We've got to overhaul our voting system. You all know many examples of voter irregularity or just outright cheating and ballot stuffing and all sorts of things. And so until we get that corrected, nothing else can happen, because that's how we elect people that would.
We welcome you, and nice to have you come out on this wintry day. Spend some time getting to know our guest, Robert Gaylon Ross. To give you a little background on Robert, I just want to show you how credentialed he is. Robert was born in Big Lake, Texas, and he holds a BS degree in industrial engineering from Texas A&M University. While active in engineering, he was licensed professional in the state of Texas and a national certified manufacturing engineer. After graduation, he accepted a commission as a second lieutenant, later promoted to first lieutenant in the Army Security Agency, the ASA, a branch of the National Security Agency, the NSA, which is the big brother to the CIA. Military training was in the field of cryptoanalysis, or rather known as breaking codes, and served as a company commander with an intelligence unit on the demilitarized zone in the Chorwon Valley, South Korea, from 1956 to 1957, after the fighting had ceased. Upon leaving active duty, he began his professional career in the petroleum industry, served as an industrial engineer for 10 years until being promoted into management, and was a manufacturing plant manager for over 10 years. The past 17 years, he served as an international management consultant working in the U.S., Japan, Mexico, Canada, England, and Iran. Interesting. After completing the manuscript to his first book, The Who's Who of the Elite, which we have available here at the bookstore, we have all of his books available, he contacted a number of publishers to ascertain their interest in the material. They all declined, imagine that, because of the subject matter, so he formed his own publishing company, RIE, and published the first of 14 books in progress. The author has devoted the rest of his life to exposing the real truth about those evil ones in the world who would like to make us all their slaves. Robert Gaylon Ross is the author of several other books, including The Elite Serial Killers of Lincoln, JFK, RFK, and MLK, as well as The Elite Don't Dare Let Us Tell the People. And his newest book is entitled What the Elite Have Done to America and What to Do About It. So without, nobody came to hear me talk, so without further ado, I'll just hand it over to
You did a
Robert.
good job. You did good.
Yes, you did.
And let's all welcome
All
him.
right.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Harlan. This is probably my third or fourth visit here, and I always enjoy coming to your store because you have nothing but the truth in your store, and you're willing to put it out there, and you're not ashamed of it, and you're proud of it, and so I like to participate in and associate with people of that mode.
Thank you,
But you're doing a great job, and so hang in there. It's only going to get better.
I'm going to take your word on that.
All right.
I'm going to quote you on that.
Trusting you.
Put this up a little. All right.
We don't have enough time for me to go over all my books, so but when I get through, we'll have a Q&A period, and I'll be glad to answer questions on any of the previous books. Tonight, we'll talk about a DVD that I just produced. This is a FileMaker Pro database advanced, which is compatible with both PCs and Macintosh. And once you load it into your DVD drive of your computer, the FileMaker Pro advanced software is then resident. You don't need it on your computer. It's all in the DVD.